Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Praise Podcast. My name is Eric Lyday. Of course, I am joined by the one, the only, the co-host above any other co-host.
Thank you.
The Brooke
Thank you.
Paninsky. The crowd goes wild. People are standing. They're cheering. The roar is, you can probably barely hear me talking over the crowd cheers, but we are excited to be here for another episode of the Praise Podcast. We are, if you're watching this, we'll go ahead and date this podcast. It's the week of Easter.
Yep.
Easter is coming, which, for us church people and Christians, this is I would say a fairly big week. A lot of excitement, a lot of things to celebrate. If we don't see you before, happy Easter. Hopefully you're making plans to attend somewhere and celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, which is, worth celebrating.
It's worth what it's all about.
Yeah. So, we're going to actually, this episode, we're going to kind of talk a little bit of Easter stuff as well, being 'tis the season. We're going to give some insight, some looks into, some thoughts, some things that stick out to us, some points that we feel like maybe are worth talking about, all about Easter. And so, that's what we're going to talk about today. So hopefully that interests you and you're going to stick around. Of course, we want to tell you, if you want to get involved with this podcast, one of the best ways to do that, head over to Instagram. You can follow us there, or you can always go to our website, thepraisepodcast.com. There you can connect with us. You can get Praise Podcast merch. You can find resources on books and Bibles and studies and you name it. You can find it on the website. So today, if you're sitting there, you're bored at work, it's probably spring break maybe for some of you, and you're looking for something to do, thepraisepodcast.com will fill at least, 15 minutes of your day right there. And so it's worth checking out. So head over to thepraisepodcast.com and you can join in the conversation there and check it out. So, Brooke.
Yeah.
You doing well before we dive into all these things?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I know we've not talked about it yet, but I'm feeling so pregnant all of a sudden. It's just
surprise, everyone. Big news.
Yeah, I know. But it's one of those things that with Nolan, everybody knew.
Yeah.
And with this baby, it's been really sweet to just kind of keep it to the people you see every day and your family and everything. But Hayden and I are expecting our second bio baby, another boy, our fifth kiddo all together. But I'm finally to the point where, gosh, when this goes, it'll be we'll be 23 weeks in when they watch this. But it's over halfway for sure. But it's I'm really starting to actually feel the physical side of it. It's just hard. I'm just a small person. I don't have a torso. And so having to carry a baby is just a lot.
Yeah.
So, it is for anyone and everyone, but all the ladies out there know. But yeah. So other than that, I feel good. I'm doing good. But that's definitely been just a whole thing to navigate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
and so
you've been doing well.
Thank you.
You're doing great.
Yeah. I think
over halfway.
Last weekend was the weekend I was okay, now I'm finally to the point where I'm okay, we're here.
Yeah.
So
well,
anyways,
just day by day,
it's a blessing.
We take it as the athletes say, we take it one game at a time, one day at a time.
That's it.
Yeah.
And
that's
every
all
day's game day.
Yeah.
Really.
So,
until he's here.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting.
It's exciting, but
it has been fun to from the outside perspective to slowly watch people. I don't know. It's been a while. I feel since I know you say it a lot, and honestly, it's just very easy to forget you're pregnant a lot of times. And then, recently, obviously, physically, you can't really.
The belly's out.
People are coming up hey, is I don't know. Does she
She
finding
let
like the
herself
Is she
go.
found like the little Debbie snack cakes or what's going on here?
That's
And I'm like,
amazing.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's just completely given up. But
But it is
yeah.
so funny though too because like if it's not on Facebook, everyone just thinks it's a secret,
Yep.
or everyone thinks if it's not on Facebook, like
Mhm.
it just isn't. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
we're so weird about Facebook. Our culture is,
Yeah.
and so it's been so funny
It's
to
not
just
official
kind of
until
like
it's Facebook official.
yeah, and I'm like that's just so silly. So of course leave it to me to be like, like I will when I will, but
Yeah.
who cares? And so, but
Yeah.
then that's so funny because like that's just how everybody knows everything
Yeah.
is when you post stuff. But I'm just not a big. I mean, anyone who knows me knows I'm not a big social media person anyways. Like, I'm not a huge poster or putting, like, all the things out there all the
Yep.
time. And so, yeah, like, I mean, I'm sure I know we will eventually, but it's just kind of like, just, no, we don't really need to
At this
either.
point,
So
you just need to wait
it's
until
been
he's
so
here.
fun because actually,
And that's-
truly not many people can say that. My friend can say that they did that. And my friend Alyssa, with her second little boy, like she kind of did that. She was just like the people she was around every day, like knew. And it was just really authentic the way like other people found out because
Yep.
it wasn't blasted all over social media. But like the second they found out or whatever, like they just sat in it for a while, and I thought that was kind of sweet. And so it was just kind of cool to, our closest people, like we were able to tell, and just I say closest to, like as in like close proximity, like you see them every day, you work together every day, all the things. But it's been really fun, like when our church family, who we only see on the weekend, like have slowly and surely been able to figure it out, and it's just been really funny. But
Yeah.
some people have been greatly offended, but
Yeah.
it's whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun from a
It's
distance to
been
stand and
fun
watch
overall,
watch
for
people
sure.
find out, and you're just like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens here.
Well, and
you
then
know?
they'll still whisper. Like I've got a big old belly now, and
Yeah.
they're still like, I
Yeah.
just heard the news.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you whispering like it's a secret?
Yeah.
So it's just so fun. But it's been a blast. But yeah, but that's what's new. That's how I'm doing. And yeah, so it's pretty great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that there are some people that were with us the last time that this we went through this,
Mm-hmm.
and don't worry, like we'll survive. Even though Brooke will probably disappear for a while, maybe.
Yeah.
We're not super good at compiling things and planning ahead, and so
of
who
course
knows?
not.
But don't worry, we'll survive. So, but yeah, we're excited for round 2 there.
It was
for
so
sure.
good.
It
Yeah.
is. It's gonna be great.
Thanks for asking. So
No problem.
There's that.
You're welcome. So let's hit a little song spotlight, and then we'll talk some Easter.
yeah.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. So my song spotlight, I actually just heard this song today. So it maybe breaks the rules of song spotlight a little bit, because the goal of song spotlight is here's a song that you've listened to a bunch recently, but I listened to this song this morning.
And you're like, but I'm about to be listening to it.
And I'm about to listen to this song a bunch because I really like it.
I have no idea what you're about to say.
Ooh.
Yeah, it never happens. Usually I can peg most of your, like at least.
Yeah,
top
and this
3
is a
song
little out
spotlights.
of character for me song
Yeah.
as well. Not, I won't say that. It's a different than I would typically.
Tell us.
Boy, the people want to know. So this song is actually it's pretty new, and I discovered this song the way that you often discover things. I was listening to another song, and then Apple
yeah.
Music just fed me this. They were like, "Oh yeah, you like that? Try this one."
And you're like, wow, I really did like that.
And I was like,
Thank
"Wow,
you.
good job, Apple Music." There's a free plug, but it is by Bethel Music,
Okay.
and it is pretty new. It looks like it just came out, about a month ago, so fairly new. But it's called "Tend." Have you heard that one yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that.
It's got this cool little artwork on it,
Yeah,
and
is that the same one that Lee was talking about, or is that totally?
I don't
different?
know. It might. This feels like a Lee song.
Or maybe it was Morgan.
I could see
Oh, I
either.
don't
I
know.
could see
I
either
know
one of
both
them talking
I feel
about
like
this
it's
song.
a song that like a friend has sent me,
It
and that I've
wouldn't-
listened to.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if. I mean,
And I
I'll be
feel like
honest.
of all my friends, Lee
it is
and
a
Morgan would have
feminine.
been
It's
for
a
sure.
feminine vibe
The
song.
two that would have.
So, but I'm owning it, and I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say
it's
either one
very
of them.
prayerful. Like
Yes,
it's a very
yes,
like
yes, it
it's
is.
a very just like warm, restful, peaceful,
Yes.
prayerful state of like a song.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Like the
composition,
lyrics
they'd
are,
say.
and it's just a very. So I've been reading. I don't know. I think it was maybe it was last episode. Maybe it was, I don't know, a couple episodes. We were talking about where to start in your Bible reading if you need to or whatever. And that just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was kind of in between where I had been reading, and so we had said like John is a great place to start. Yes. And so I was just like, well, I'm in between. Let's do John. And I forget how he's such a creative and artistic writer. Like compared to the other three Gospels, his writing is just, I just love it because it just paints a totally different picture. And he comes at it from a totally different perspective, which, I mean, is the point of him. But anyways, so all that to say, this song, because I've been in John, this song really fits, like, just the way they wrote this song. Like, the verses, in the landscape of my life, you don't rush through any season. You always take your time. A careful hand, a gentle guide. You take what's dead away, and you prune what's running wild. And I don't know. I think also, and this is so, I've turned into a plant guy a while back. Okay, so I've been a plant guy for a little bit now, and two of my plants have developed this like fuzzy stuff on it. At first, I thought it was dust. Then I thought, are my plants molding? And I couldn't figure out what this is. And so
Is it like a fungus?
Well, so I went to a smarter plant person than me, and it turns out it's like a fly. Like it's like a nest of some, but it's like
that's gross.
They don't ever like do anything, but like they don't fly
this is in
around.
Your office?
Yes, this is in
You're
my
at
office
work?
right now. Yes.
Ew.
Yeah,
it's like
I know.
a science class.
I know. And so anyways, I was like, well, what do I do with my plants? But basically, like, you have to...
Is it going to hurt your plant? I'm sorry. You're probably going to get to it.
Well, I'm trying.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You're excited. I appreciate the excitement.
I'm shocked. I don't know that I'm excited. It's
it was... But basically, I need to, like, wipe every leaf, apparently. Like, spray it with water and wipe it. One person said you could just shower with your plant. That felt
so
a little...
strange.
That felt
Who
a little...
told you that?
Well, that's what the internet...
Oh
the internet
gosh,
told me
okay.
that. But anyways, that felt a little over the top. But anyways, so I've been needing to prune this plant because it has affected them. They're not doing as well as they once were. And so I've been in the process of really like trimming them back,
Tending
pruning,
to your plants.
tending to my plants, pruning them because somehow they've become infected with these insects. Yeah. So
what else in your office can be? Okay, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, that's probably I'm not like gross, all right, people. Like
It's
do
true.
clean.
You're really not, but
I'm
like
a clean
that just
person,
weirds me
but
out.
it does.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm close to just throwing them away. But anyways, the lyrics of this, just that idea of the tending, the pruning, seeing God almost in like a gardener eyes in what he does, the way that he cares for us, the way that sometimes we do have to go through a pruning season. Sometimes we do, and it's not fun. Things have to be stripped away, cut away. But that he cares enough to do that because he cares enough for us to thrive at the end of it. And
just think how, like, for someone like God, like how obviously gross sin is, you know? And so like when you come into the picture and, you are not asked or called or expected to clean any of that up before you come to the Lord. And so then it's like genuinely like for him to care that much about us to get to the surface past all the junk we show up with. Like when we step into his presence and just ask him for help, like, and he removes our sin and he, prunes us of just fleshly things. And, so I mean, I love the idea and the visual of just him like tending to the places in our spirits that he needs
if I am going to actually clean this plant, like that's going to take a minute. Like they're not small. And so it's like,
you've
just
not cleaned the plant yet?
Well, no, I'm just,
oh my gosh.
Well, I've just been twiddling just all this spare time. I have not taken the time to wipe down every leaf.
Someone remind me to take a picture of this plant, and that'll be the first thing I put on socials.
Yeah, before I do it.
Since your birthday.
Well, yeah,
since your birthday post in February.
that will be our return. That will be our return to Instagram.
If
Eric's
you know.
sick infested plants.
So anyways, speaking of your nasty plants, it's my turn. Okay, well, I love the idea, like sneak peek, kind of what we're talking about. Eric had this idea, we're talking about Easter things and just like thoughts about it. And one of the main things he was talking about the other day was just the fact that like the disciples knew about like they knew what was going to happen when it came to like the crucifixion and like the resurrection. Like Jesus openly talked about it, and it's mentioned in several of the Gospels, if not all of them, honestly. But I'll have to fact check that. But it's like we read about it, and like not only were they kind of told about it, but it's also like they were exposed to so many of Jesus's miracles, and so it's like they had, you know, just kind of like this repertoire with the Lord of like, or this rapport with the Lord. Like they saw miracles, and they saw him do impossible things, and they've seen his character. They know him better than anyone, and it's, you know, they're friends, and he's their teacher. Like, I don't know. It's just wild that, you know, they have this history there, you know, an experience, this lived experience, shared experience together, but yet, come the reality of the crucifixion and the resurrection and the 3 days in between, it's like the disciples seemed confused, you know, or they seemed like they really weren't anticipating, right? So anyways, that was kind of the conversation we'll dive into later. But I think as we jump into that, my song Spotlight kind of goes into that. And we've talked about it before, and it's a common song. I'm sure so many people have heard it, but Tiffany Hudson leads it, and it's called All of a Sudden. And I'm almost positive it's already on our playlist, but just thinking about that, because personally, and we've shared about it too, like just growing really weary in a waiting season and a wilderness season, and just kind of like when you've been praying for the same thing for, you know, 2 to 4 years now, depending on how you look at it, in like our foster care journey, you know, it's like, and there seems to be no movement, and it just seems like there's literally nothing that you can do. And I feel like pastors will talk about that, or you'll hear people say that, but it's like until it's your experience, it's you don't really understand the weight of the hopelessness, and then like the dependence of like the Lord, that you really have to decide, like, you know, I either going to believe what you say or I'm not, you know, and I either believe you are who you are and you do what you do, or I don't. And so I think that song, All of a Sudden, I feel like it just kind of kept coming on, and there's been major breakthrough on a whole other prayer that we've had for, well, this one probably again, 2 to 4 years at the same time, but it's been huge breakthrough and huge blessing. And finally, like, we're seeing fruit of just like our faithfulness and our obedience, and just in the waiting and the trusting. And it's so worth it when you start seeing the fruit and the blessing, and when you see and experience God's, you know, provision, and literally see his hand, you know, going before you and working for you. And I don't know, and then it kind of just strengthens me. And then as I listen to this song again, like, all of a sudden, you know, like he's coming. Like, whether, you know, we think about it in the resurrection, he's coming back. Whether we think about it at his return, he's coming back all of a sudden. And whether it be like on our behalf for a prayer that, you know, we've been waiting for, he's coming back all of a sudden. And so it really will just take a moment, just one moment, for the things we've been contending for in prayer to just come to pass. And so it's like, I don't want to be caught in a situation with the Lord where I've grown weary, and my weariness has led me to be unfaithful, or like I've grown weary in the waiting and weary in the wilderness, and you know, and I don't know, it found me in a place, you know, of kind of being, you know, I just doubtful Thomas, you know, like I just don't want the Lord to find me in that position, right? Like I love him, I trust him, I would be faithful. And so it's like, I don't want you to be working this on my behalf and then finally be, you know, ready to deliver this like gift and this blessing, and then catch me. And there's a parable in Matthew that kind of even makes me think about that, about like the poor servant who was like trusted to like, you know, take care of the others, and then, you know, the master returns, and then he gets rewarded, and then he's bad. He's he's bad to the servants, and the master returns, and then like he's like evil, and the master catches him like doing all these, you know, like things that aren't fruitful. And so I don't know. It was just kind of like there's been songs, there's been stuff in the Word. Again, the parable I was reading. There's been so many things that has just been so encouraging to just like keep going, and that He strengthens us even when we're weary and when we feel like we just keep praying and we're still not seeing results, or when we've still like, you're just about ready to kind of give up on it, or buy into the lie of like, well, it's going to be, even longer, or like your attitude changes, your posture changes. And it's like, we're always tempted to kind of fall into that. And, because of our flesh, but it's like, I don't know. There's great encouragement in the Word and through worship, just like all of a sudden, He could come and, all of a sudden it could be the day, and all of a sudden the one phone call that we're waiting for could change everything that we've been praying for our children for, now 4 years. And so, I just feel like that song is a really great anchoring spot when you really need to be encouraged, if you're also in a season of waiting. So, yeah, but I feel like that's my song spotlight, but I do feel like it's a good transition into just kind of like that first snippet of like Easter conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's worth noting to just how important, or I guess the reality behind, like you were saying, it can feel so eternal on the wait, forever,
Mm-hmm.
but it really does come down to like at some point
Mm-hmm.
that time is going to come, and it will be one phone call, and then it's like
And it's done.
provision, it's boom, there.
Yeah.
Not that there hasn't been in other places, but it's just, it really is how quick it can turn.
Yeah, and
there's something to that.
And I guess when I even say like when I'm talking about like I don't want the Lord to catch me in like a bad posture with it, like genuinely, like when that provision comes, if I've really believed it's coming from Him, then when it does come, I want to be able to be full of faith and be able to say like to the people around me, see, I told you He was going to do it. Like, see, this is what we knew would happen. Like, look at what our God did for us. Like it was finally time, and we knew, and we didn't give up, and we stayed the pursuit, and we kept contending. Like, I want Him to find me having been faithful in the waiting, instead of at a posture that's just, again, not fruitful, or in disbelief, or, not paying attention to what He's doing, and things like that, So like more of in line of, I don't know, being caught and tangled up in a foothold, from the enemy, and like, in a season of waiting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's good. Good songs. Good stuff. Honestly, though, that's a podcast in itself right there. We call it quits.
Yeah. I mean, well, and again, it just goes so perfectly with, that first bit we were talking about with the disciples.
So, as we mentioned, it's Easter time. And so, obviously, for several weeks now, we've been, if you don't know, Brooke and I work at a church, Central Christian Church in Mount Vernon. We are leaders over our creative arts ministry. And so, worship and media and production and all these things, we're involved in. And so obviously things like Easter service is rightfully so, a big deal for our church. And so, we've been talking and planning for several weeks as we get closer and closer to that. And so just along with that, I've been, thinking a lot about the Easter story, been reading a lot on the Easter story just to have my mind where it needs to be, and I want it to be as we are, prepping, or we're talking about ideas or different things like that. And as I was reading, there's just been a few, little things that have popped up that I thought, these are just, they're nothing groundbreaking. I'm not the first person to ever talk about these or probably point them out, but they're just things that as I was reading, I thought like, I've never really thought about that, or I've never really looked at that perspective from that. And so when we were talking about what this episode might entail, and we talked about Easter, I was telling Brooke, as she mentioned, one of the things that I was actually talking with James about this the other day. I think he's actually going to talk about it a little bit in he's doing communion at Easter, and he brought it up as well. So there must be something to it.
Yeah.
But there's just, I think it's interesting to me that the disciples, as Brooke alluded to earlier, obviously they have walked with Jesus for, Jesus' ministry is 3 years. We know that. So they've walked with Jesus for quite some time. now. They have firsthand witnessed healings. They've witnessed Lazarus they've witnessed that. They've witnessed the multiplication of food, calming storms, walking on water. I mean, you name it, they've seen, and a lot of times firsthand, they've seen Jesus do the miraculous. They've seen him do the impossible.
And not only seen, but I think it's interesting that they were a part of as well.
Experienced.
So they truly were partnering with him in some of these shared supernatural, like miraculous encounters and miracles that we still read about today. And so it's one thing to just sit back and like watch Jesus do it, but it's another that their hands were invited to be involved, and so.
Yeah, at one point empowered and sent out
Yes.
to do the work themselves. Yeah. And so they've seen some things, and they've experienced things and they've witnessed things. And so it just was what I was telling Brooke is it's interesting to me that, you look at the Last Supper. So the Last Supper is this meal that, is widely known, but it's basically this last meal that Jesus has with his disciples where really he lays down the foundation of what we now do as communion. In our church, we do communion every week, but, he talks about the bread being his body. He talks about the wine being representing his blood. And, he's talking about that basically the time has come for him to go and die. And, he's telling his disciples, but have faith, you'll see me again. He calls out Judas and all that comes to light. And, so he has these, and this isn't the only time that he has these conversations with the disciples of basically telling them of like, look, my time is going to come. I'm going to have to give my life, but like have faith. I'll be back. Like I will be back. And so it's not like, they're not shocked when he gets arrested in the garden, or at least, they knew something was coming. Jesus tells them like, hey, this is coming. This is going to happen. I'm going to be betrayed. And so this isn't, although I'm sure traumatic and, all those things, doesn't necessarily catch them off guard. And so what I was telling Brooke is just one of the things that, from their perspective, I am surprised knowing Jesus like they did, seeing all that Jesus like they had, that they weren't sitting outside the tomb 3 days later after his death waiting for him to come out, that they weren't that they weren't there in expectation of what was to come. And I have no idea what I would do in that scenario. It's much easier to sit back and, say, how could that, but it's interesting to me. And it really speaks to, I think, a lot of the humanness, the reality of just how powerful, like, our lack of understanding of, like, God and Jesus really is as humans, just because, like, the ones that literally walked with him every day knew what was going to, I have to believe they knew, like, what he said was real. And then yet, it's the women going to the tomb to apply some spices and things are how they found out, like, oh my gosh, he's not there. And so, I don't know, that was just an interesting point. I don't know that I have necessarily like any hard-hitting things with that, but I just, a conversation point of just, I think it's interesting that, if I was them, I would be like, guys, like he told us in 3 days, like we got to get there. Like it's the third day, like sun's
like
coming up,
like or something.
Yeah, like we better, like we better head over there. Like something's going to go down, but instead they're in hiding, and I understand there's a lot going on with that. But I don't know. That was just one of the things that stood out to me. And I found to be just an interesting note.
Yeah, and it said, upon hearing of the empty tomb, Peter and John set out running to investigate the matter themselves. John outran Peter and arrived at the gravesite first, I love that they added that in there.
Always a great thing.
Oh, that's so great. But
if that were you and I running and you beat me.
If I wrote that gospel, I would for sure add that. Yes,
you would have been like, and by the way, Brooke beat Eric to the tomb.
It's so funny. But I just think like, you had two of the disciples like running to go investigate and see. And then you think about Thomas, who then later like didn't believe it still. So not only did Thomas hear about it in the ministry of Jesus, that it was coming, but then, heard the word that it had happened, still didn't believe it, still thought, well, who knows what he thought, but still didn't believe it. The Bible tells us that. And then, and to the point where like for him to believe, he bargained with Jesus and was like, I want to touch and see myself. And so in Jesus's kindness, and I love that this is in the Bible because this is what so many of us are still like. And we can sit here and be like, how in the world were they so confused, or didn't they believe? And if we were to be writing scripture right now for years to come, people would be like, oh my gosh, like, well, how did they just not have more faith than that? So it's just our nature and our flesh for sure. But Jesus is so kind to Thomas. And his love for Thomas, and understanding that we really as humans can't comprehend the things that God can, like we really aren't even close. And so here Jesus is to love and to help Thomas. He shows himself, he reveals himself. He allows Thomas to touch this, places and spaces on his hands where the nails were. And it's like, And I just think like God doesn't have to reveal himself the way that he does, but how many times in our lives can we say that we had more faith because he met us there when we desperately just wanted more evidence, instead of just taking him for what he said the first time he said it and running with it and clinging to it. Until our knuckles were white, unwilling to compromise in what we heard and what we believe, and unwilling to be, tempted or distracted or discouraged by the enemy above God's word and all of that. And I just think it's the brave thing, it's the goal, right? But it's like what we fail to do so often. So often, so many of us are like Thomas in situations with Jesus, and we're just like, I know what you said, and I know what people are saying about you, but I really need you to come and show me again, and I need you to show me in a way that you've never showed me before. And really, like, sometimes I think the audacity of Thomas to be like, Jesus, prove it. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, I have to see it before I, and then I love that he says, like, you believe because you've seen, but blessed are those who have believed without seeing. And I don't even know where that's at, but I just love that scripture because
verse 29.
There you
29.
go.
Word for word, by the way. Great job. Look at you. She's a Bible scholar.
Yeah, but I don't know, that passage of scripture has always resonated with me, and I love doing communion. I like if I could do every communion message just like on Thomas, I would, because I feel like it's so relatable.
Yeah.
And it's so humbling, and I think it's a beyond the crucifixion. It's just like the other way Jesus showed his love like in the most profound way is after everything that he just did, after everything that everyone's saying about him, after their previous relationship, their lived and shared experiences, and Thomas still says, like, I have to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so I wasn't, just you talking about all that has just spurred this in my mind, because another person in the whole crucifixion, resurrection story that I've always just been very intrigued by is Pilate. Yes.
Yeah.
And but you talking about all that, because it's so interesting though in the timing and the who that Jesus is willing to give the evidence to, because he very easily could have told Pilate and showed Pilate who he was at any point in that trial. I mean, Pilate actually was begging. I mean, Pilate wanted to let him go. Pilate knew that he was innocent, but and in multiple times is probably all but begging, like, look, I believe you. Just give me one little bit of evidence here, and so I can show all these other people. And Jesus didn't even speak most of the time. And so then I think it's just interesting. Then you've got Thomas. So I think there is something to, because of who Thomas was to Jesus, he was walking with Jesus. There was a relationship there, although maybe Jesus didn't want Thomas to be in that spot. He was willing to give Thomas the evidence that he was after. And I think it's interesting that, just a few days previous, Pilate is asking really for the same evidence, like, prove to me that you are who you say you are, and Jesus won't. Obviously, he knew what he needed to do, what had to happen, but still, it's just, as you were talking about all that, this idea of the timing that Jesus is willing to give the evidence and the who that he is willing to give the evidence to is interesting as well.
There's a verse in Matthew, I think it's chapter 27. I'm trying to find it. But it's kind of like when the next day on the Sabbath, the leading priests and Pharisees went to see Pilate. They told him, "Sir, we remember what that deceiver once said while he was still alive." So even the priests and Pharisees remember what Jesus said about what was going to happen in this moment. He said, "After 3 days, I will rise from the dead." So then they continue to tell Pilate, "So we request that you seal the tomb until the 3rd day. This will prevent his disciples from coming and stealing his body and then telling everyone he was raised from the dead." Okay, and also pause. Even the priests and the Pharisees were like, well, his disciples are going to be there, just waiting. You know what I mean? Like, his disciples they're going to, they know that this is coming too. Like, they're well aware. And so trying to outsmart, them. But yet here we are with the question of well, where were the disciples?
Yeah.
They weren't just sitting guard at the tomb. They weren't the ones standing guard. And so it continues on to say, if that happens, we'll be worse off than we were at first. Pilate replied, "Take guards and secure it the best you can." So they sealed the tomb and posted guards to protect it. And that's what I thought of. Side note, we're working on this beginning portion of Easter stuff and the written word. That when you were talking about what the stone was or whatever, it was just but the word guarded came to mind. Because when you think about the stone, you're just yeah. But I'm
you would think that was the guard.
Yeah, it was guarded, literally by guards sent by Pilate because people were so eager to find out or to prove that Jesus wasn't who he said that he was. Yeah.
Well, and that's the conversation of the ladies on the way to the tomb is even who's going to move this stone for us? We got to get, someone's going to have to move this stone. So, yeah, the fact that they would feel the need to guard it, something that was already very immovable, says a lot. But another thing, do you have something else you want to add to that?
Well, the only other thing I was going to say was just that, I do think it kind of enhanced an insecurity that, they felt because they really weren't sure. Because Pilate is, like you said, he believed, oh, this man, I really believe he's innocent. And then, but the insecurity in the Pharisees to be, so proud that they're we'll do anything and everything to prove that we're right and he's wrong, that then they go all these miles. But then and not only was resurrection not that was enough to just prove that Jesus was who he was. It not only a public death so people would see it and people would be talking about it and that there'd be witnesses to his death. That was the other thing. So many people saw it. So it's so there were so many people who could speak and say no, he was murdered. We saw it. We were there. And then you have all these other people entangled and involved in the burial situation. He is in the tomb, sealed shut. It's guarded by Pilate and all these other unbelievers who were so but it's but God being God and just to really emphasize victory and to really, I feel just burn to shreds any kind of question that anybody could have that he, didn't have the power that he did and that he wasn't who he was and all the things. He even supernaturally moved the stone. You know what I mean? And supernaturally defeated death and supernaturally, all these things supernaturally, revealed himself to the disciples supernaturally, so much happened in, was it 40 days or whatever before he ascended and supernaturally ascended. So it's like he left us without a shadow of a doubt that no one else could do what he did, and that everything that he said was true and who he claims to be is true without any, shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is always, and I don't know, maybe he was catching his breath, but it's interesting to me that John doesn't go in, but Peter does.
Yeah,
like
he
John got there.
Does it say he peeks through?
Yeah, he just peeked in. No, he ain't there. And then Peter gets there and he's like, oh, I'm going in. But that was something that I was reading was saying, obviously they don't know the exact, spot. But they were saying because of, Joseph who gave the tomb to use, like they know that what a typical, like somebody of that stature, basically what a rich man's tomb, the type of tomb that would have been probably given. They said it would have an opening of probably about 3 feet high, 2.5 feet wide. So it's not a very big opening, large enough to get into, but you would have had to, there was commitment needed to go inside to see, And so I don't know, maybe that's why John, he didn't know. He's like, I ain't crawling in there. But with that, Peter does go in, and something that I think is just again speaks to the signs that Jesus leaves, and speaks to really just the miracle and the evidence of impossible that took place. So it says that so Peter goes in. So it says, then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. So what's interesting on this is, so I was reading about basically like what they did to a body, what they did to a dead body. They would have wrapped it in these linens. They would have applied all these spices and ointments and all these different things that basically would have combined with that linen to harden and to basically mummify the body. Over time, these linens would have hardened up and created like a cast-like texture. And so what it was saying was the emphasis here is on, like, had a human hand come in and removed those wrappings, like it would have been obviously cut, torn, because it would have been a hard, like, material that they were trying to get through.
Where'd you read this? I've never heard that before.
Enduring Word.
No way.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
I thought you were going the direction like people will teach on, like, about the symbolic of like the symbolism behind the cloth being folded. Well, you know how people talk about that too?
And so that's what they were basically saying was, like, the power that came from the fact that they go in and they don't just see like shards of ripped stuff everywhere, but yet they see a linen that obviously had all this applied to it is yet still soft and folded, like speaks to that, like, no man just came in here and removed this. Like, this was a miraculous thing.
Yeah, but because happened. Of what it, like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so, like, I don't even know where I've heard this, just, in teachings or podcasts or whatever. So again, like, I'm no Bible scholar, check it yourself. But like, I've heard it being taught that the symbolism of the fact that the linen was folded was like a sign that for their return. So like, it was a custom, like, I don't know if it was like, if they compare it to like when they eat or whatever it was, but like the sign was of just like, if like the napkin, the linen was folded, that don't take it, like they're coming back. Like it was kind of just like
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even, like, again, check it yourself, but that's a thought to be like, like, I wonder if there's some merit to that, because that's really like interesting, because obviously even in the symbolism of like what supernaturally occurred with the linens, of just like, well, what does that also represent, based upon I would say, like, more than just like God had to have done that, but also like God saying something about it too.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard that part
That's
of
what
that.
I thought you were
No.
going to say.
No.
So here I am like,
Yeah.
wait, I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, well, see, we're just
There you
something
go.
more. You learn something new
That's
every day. But
hilarious.
yeah, that's
so good.
and it may have it may have done that. But yeah, I found that to be very interesting. They just said it was another kind of like God nod of saying like, yeah, this wasn't, somebody didn't come in and just take this body.
Yeah.
Or somebody like, no, this was me. And so I don't know. I just really, I had never read that part about the linen. Apparently I knew nothing about the linens before today, but,
That's funny.
I'm learning. So, but yeah, so gosh, there's so much. I mean, we could go on for forever on this, but, any other notes, any other things that are worth, pinpointing, talking about in your mind?
I mean, I heard Lisa Harper. She has a study with Chris Kane right now. That's out. That's really good. And they did one for Christmas and they did one for Easter. And so, anyways, just kind of reading that and went down a rabbit hole of other teachings and things or whatever. But like, I just think it's really powerful because one time I heard Lisa teach and she said that, the Easter isn't just like a New Testament thing. Like the Easter story, like it happened, like we see it throughout Scripture. We see it coming throughout Scripture, and then I love Chris. I've heard her teach too, and she's like literally will say it's one of my favorite quotes. But she's just talking about truly like that is like the linchpin like of our whole entire faith, like that, like what happened on Easter, like it's the reason for everything. And so, of course, Easter is my favorite, and it's of course a huge, just event, celebration, like this moment we take to really just talk about and remember like what he did. But it's like, I mean, we do that. So I don't know how to say it. Like without the crucifixion, nothing that like we have zero authority,
right.
And so it's like everything that we've, that we stand on and really truly like is on the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. Yep. And so like Easter is just a huge deal. And it's empowering. It's inspiring. I love that the Lord still uses it to teach and to encourage. And, I think so many times the enemy really does try to make it feel small or make it feel redundant or make it feel silly or childlike or like just another little story. But I think I'm encouraged because, when it just excites you and the Lord reveals new things about it and you really grasp like what it bought for you and what it then like allows you to walk in as a believer, like as a disciple, as a follower of Christ. I don't know. It just, of course, the enemy would want to make you feel like it's just like another, minute little thing. Yeah. But it's like, oh my gosh, no, it's everything. Yeah, it's literally everything. So I just think it's encouraging and powerful. And
Andy Stanley always loved that. He said, like the reality is like our Christian faith hinges not on a story or anything, but like it hinges on an event.
Yeah.
And the event was
and it legit happened.
And resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's, and that's what he always said, like any guy who can predict his death and predict his coming back from death and pull it off is a guy that like I'm going to listen to.
Yeah.
And he was like, and obviously the event was big enough that people were willing to give their lives to make sure that people knew that this event happened for many days, months, years to come, and still are today, because it was that impactful. It was that real of an event that it literally has changed everything.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is even if you are reading like history books, like in school, or you're studying history, and not even from a Christian perspective, but it is like recorded. Like you can find like people mentioning it and books teaching on it or whatever, and like not from the lens of like them being a believer, but just like, again, this is an event that happened. Here's when we think it happened. There's all these things. But I'm like, there's still people who like even that moment that it happened have the invitation to believe that he was who he said that he was or he wasn't. And so it's like, and that's still always the decision, like every single day that we get to make, and that people make every day. And I think like the decision for eternity like started right then and there. And we're still seeing all these years later people who are, literally making the decision to not believe. They believe it really happened, but they don't really own it for themselves. They'll say, this is what Christians believe, or, this is, their truth or whatever. And it's just like, and then you're a Christian, you're like, but it's the truth. Yeah. So, but I mean, and it's just that it started with, well, their disciples actually believe. Will Pilate actually believe? Will the women actually believe? Like, will the Pharisees actually believe, the people who were there in that time? And then it's like, but that's still always been the question. And even to this day, that's still the question. Like, will you hear what he did for you, and will you believe?
Yeah. Feels like a great way to end it right there. Well done.
Easter.
What a wrap up.
I love Easter.
Yeah, it really is. It's
awesome.
I always feel, I was talking to a friend last night, and he was asking just about how Easter was going and things like that. And I said, it's always like a weird feeling because like Christmas is such a big deal. And, and rightfully so. You put so many things, and I don't know, sometimes I feel a little convicted. I'm like, am I putting as much effort and thought towards Easter as I do towards Christmas? Because I believe that Easter is, like you said, that is the hinge point, but I was like, there's just something about Easter that it's like, I just always want it to just be about him and what he did. And I always feel almost like it's irreverent to do anything other than just celebrate and worship what he did and what he's done for us. And like anything else is just like almost dishonoring of what it's really all like about.
Distracting maybe.
It's like, I
don't
want.
But everybody, because you're like, I'm not trying to do anything extra. Like, because what he did is literally enough.
Like what we're celebrating is the point.
That's it. That's as big as it can get.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's just if you don't have a place to go find some place to celebrate Easter. Mm-hmm. If you're watching this before Easter, you're welcome to come and celebrate with us. If you're near the Mount Vernon or Carbondale, Illinois areas, you can come hang out at one of our services. You can go to centralnow.com and find a location and a service time that would fit you and your family. We'd love to celebrate with you. Again, head over to Instagram because it sounds like you're going to get to see my sick, ill, dying plants. But head over to Instagram and join us on there at The Praise Podcast. You can find our website, thepraisepodcast.com. You can join in there. We would love to hear what are the things about Easter that you love? What sticks out to you in the story? What are your thoughts? We would love for you to join in this conversation. You can do that on the website. It says, literally says, join the conversation. So you can do that. Of course, you can always just email us, eric@thepraisepodcast.com or Brooke @thepraisepodcast.com. But we'd love for you to head over to the website. Again, you can find resources, you can find studies, all these different things that you can just help expand your Bible study time. I'm reading John, so if anybody wants to join me in reading John, you can jump in there and you send me your thoughts on the book of John. If maybe you a couple episodes ago or whenever we talked about that, if you started reading in the book of John, I'd love to hear what you're loving and reading about that. But yeah, we're just really excited about Easter to come. And so hopefully today we'll spur some different thoughts regarding Easter for you, encourage you to dive into the story, maybe refresh yourself with it before Easter comes. And we're just excited to celebrate, and hopefully you are too. Yep. So anything else we need to tell them?
Nope. Love you.
All
Bye.
Right. Love you all. Appreciate you all. Let's be people every day and every way that bring the praise. We'll see you next time.